You're listening to the Music Tech Teacher podcast, episode number 21. Welcome to the Music Tech Teacher podcast. Music tech tips, lesson ideas, advice, news, and interviews, especially for music teachers. Brought to you by midnightmusic.com.au. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Music Tech Teacher podcast. I'm Katie Wardrobe from Midnight Music, where you can find online training, lesson plans and support for using technology in music education. Now, before we get stuck into today's show, I wanted to give a special shout out to a few people that have left reviews for this podcast in the iTunes store, which always makes me super happy. It's really lovely to see nice comments and for people to share the information about the show with their friends. So from JW Go Cats, a football fan obviously from Australia, that person says, how lucky we music teachers are to have this resource. Katie is a legend and is so generous in sharing her knowledge and creativity. Thank you so much for that comment. Really appreciate it. There was another one from Piano Ord from the United States who says, I teach piano, handbells and preschool music, finding lots of gems in each well-organised episode, which includes useful show notes. Appreciate Katie's friendly, easy to listen to style. Thank you so much for that comment too. And the third one I'm going to give a shout out to is from Tune Sifter in New Zealand, who says, great tips and tricks. Best podcast I've heard for a while. Well recorded as would be expected. Great sound quality. Can't wait for the next episode. Quite accessible and not too techie for those of us who aren't total audio and sound geeks. So thank you again. Last thank you for today. And if you'd like to leave a review for the show, I would love it. It's really helpful and happy for you to leave an honest review. It doesn't necessarily have to be a glowing one like those ones. It only takes a couple of minutes and it would really help get the word out about the show. If you don't have the time to leave a review, the other thing you can do to help the show is to share the link to the podcast with your friends and colleagues, and I would also really appreciate that as well. Now, today's guest is Fred Flowerday from MakeMusic, who are the makers of SmartMusic. I've been really lucky to have had SmartMusic support the podcast for the last 8 episodes, and I wanted to take the time in this episode to chat to Fred about SmartMusic, what it is for those who aren't familiar with it, how it works, and some of the features of the new version. So here's my chat with Fred. Today, I'm happy to be welcoming another guest to the podcast. This is Fred Flowerday from MakeMusic, the company behind Finale notation software and SmartMusic. Fred's been working for MakeMusic for around 10 years or so and has had a variety of roles at the company, the latest being the Senior Vice President of Product Strategy. He has a background in music engraving and hands-on experience with product development. Welcome, Fred, to the podcast.
All right, thank you very much.
Great to have you here. And so 10 years or so with MakeMusic, I actually noticed that one of your past positions as the product manager of Garrison, and Garrison, for those who don't know, produce high quality sound libraries. I noticed that you're involved with doing a recording session at Abbey Road Studios for a sample library. Is that correct?
Yeah, no, that's absolutely true. It was absolutely amazing. It was kind of funny to be somewhere so, special and be so busy at the same time.
Yeah, absolutely. And tell me, is that job as tedious as I would imagine it to be, recording individual instrumental samples from a variety of people? And I guess you have to record multiple versions of every single note, every articulation. Is that right?
No, you're absolutely right on. And it's funny, you get so fascinated by the details of like how long was the note? Did we hit the noise floor? Was there any sort of background noise? And you sort of lose yourself in the details. So
yeah,
it wasn't so tedious. But one of the funny things is when we recorded some brass players, and the musicians were so good that we ended up ahead of time, even though we thought we were going to be really pressed.
Wow, that's awesome. That would be unusual. That doesn't fit with the stereotypical sort of impression that a lot of people have of brass players as well.
Oh, well, these guys were just amazing. They would hit these notes, and you go, "Well, I guess that's good. Let's move on."
Awesome.
And then these folks would go, "Hey, I can get about a fifth above that. Do you want me to keep going?" And we'd say, "Yes, please. That'd be great."
Oh my gosh, that's just crazy, isn't it? Yeah, I think a lot of people don't realise that that's how sample libraries are actually made. Like the musicians have to sit there playing every single note in the range and lots of different articulations. So that's amazing. So your role at SmartMusic, I mentioned in the intro, you've been there for around 10 years or so, and you've had a variety of positions there. How's that been over the time?
Oh, it's been a great ride. I started off, in customer support, answering the phones, and what a great way to get to know the customers and the products. And I think from there I moved to repertoire development, which is the sort of the department that's responsible for putting together all the content that's in SmartMusic. We beat track it and put the sysx markers and sort of package it up so it's consumable by SmartMusic, and you sort of get deep into Finale there. And then I moved from there into an engraving position at the company, and I think that's probably where I got to really know Finale, and I don't think in a way that I hadn't before. It's sort of just 8 hours a day of sort of cruising through projects was really, really useful.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, my background is also in music engraving, and I've mentioned that on the podcast before, I think, and it's such a great way to get to know the program. It's one of those things I found I didn't sit down and learn, I've been using Spalius, but I didn't sit down and learn the program as such. You end up doing a project which makes you learn about one specific aspect, like harp music, for instance. I had a job, I had to do a massive harp score, and, I'm not a harpist. Man, that's fiddly stuff, all the pedaling, and oh my gosh. And I became an expert in harp music, and I actually ended up going to present at the harp convention or something that was here in Australia about, using notation software with harp music. It was just crazy.
Oh my God, that's fantastic. Well, I did a harp concerto once, and I felt like the harp won.
Yeah. Actually, I do remember one job where a few of us were doing a job for a specific score. We had to divide up some parts and sort of check through parts and, and do some notation work. And we were drawing straws, and none of us wanted to do the harp part, so we passed it on to someone. I think they drew the short straw for that one. Yeah. So tell us about SmartMusic. Let's just talk about, what it actually is for those people who might be listening that don't know. I mean, most people I think would be familiar with what SmartMusic is, but I'd love to just get your sort of, potted version of what it is and what it does.
Well, I think at its simplest, it's digital sheet music with an accompaniment that's sort of wrapped in practice tools, both, for the teacher and for the student.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's downplaying it quite a lot because it does some amazing things, which we'll get into. And I think that the technology has changed so much over the years. I mean, I remember early versions of SmartMusic and other similar software too. And it was okay. But over the time, it's just become so amazing. And I've been looking at this latest version of SmartMusic, the new SmartMusic, and I've been really lucky to have a sneak peek at that. And it's fairly mind-blowing, I think, and for teachers, such a time-saving tool, really. So tell us about the new version. That SmartMusic's been around a long time. Maybe you can tell us a bit about the history of SmartMusic generally, sort of when it started and how it's changed over the years and what the new version is all about.
Well, it started sort of basically back in the the early mid '90s, and it originally was a piece of hardware where you had sort of like a cartridge that contained an accompaniment that you would sort of put in, and one of the big selling points back then was it was sort of an intelligent accompaniment to you, and essentially it was the data on the cartridge would drive essentially what was a Proteus 2000 sound module inside this hardware, and it sort of progressed from there into other teacher needs for organization and class management and sending out assignments and gaining sort of a quantifiable data set and feedback and sort of like the red note and the green note assessment sort of from there. So it sort of started off as an accompanist and sort of moved into a practice and sort of skill acquisition tool as it sort of went through time.
Excellent. I didn't know that it was started out as hardware. That's really interesting. Those early days, yeah, things have changed quite a lot since then. And so the new version is great because essentially it's an online version software. So, so much software we know is moving in this direction nowadays, and that's really to give everybody access to it, no matter what device they're on. So that was the main driving reason, I'm presuming, for making the new SmartMusic an online version.
Well, absolutely. Access is one thing. It's, especially, in the States with the advent of Chromebooks and a lot of schools having a one-to-one program, it was sort of critical to move to a technology that could be supported, in this sort of new, universe. I think as well in that, being web-based enables us to continuously develop, back in the bad old days of, having client-tailored stuff, you'd make a list of bugs, you'd fix what you could in the time allowed, and then you'd sort of put it into a release. So if you were in an unfortunate position that you were in a school system that had tight IT controls, you might have a problem that you knew wouldn't be fixed, and even then, would you be able to get it installed to your system?
Yeah, absolutely. So, it's really hard because I know a lot of schools only roll out software maybe once a year or, do updates at certain stages. And especially if there's student devices involved, the IT people sometimes are handling those updates for students. And to me, it's a bit like the difference between emailing an attachment, with a Word document on it to someone where they've got to make changes and then send it back to the person. Whereas, nowadays you might use something like Google Docs where it's in the cloud and everybody can edit at the same time. And it's so great. The thing with cloud software, I often say in workshops to people is, it's the sort of software that your IT people are going to love you for because, if you go down that road, they don't have to do so much work. I mean, all the updates, like you say, they take place in the background. And so you just log in like normal the next day and, oh, hey, there's a new feature or something's been fixed. And I think that's just such a great way to work, for everybody.
Well, no, absolutely. I mean, and it's been great for, the educators as well because, we find an issue or something that can be improved. We can do it very reactively and very quickly.
Yes. I understand a couple of other companies they sort of have rolling updates. They can do updates weekly if they want to, if they've got the setup to do that. Don't have to sort of do it, once a month and save everything up for one time. So, yeah, so much better from that point of view. I think that's a big relief for, teachers and the IT people at school. So take us through like a typical workflow as a teacher. What's the sort of workflow that you would do with SmartMusic? Obviously, you're going to open it up and log in. What's your next step after that as a teacher?
Okay, so when I'm at the home screen, as a teacher, I have sort of a dashboard, and the dashboard is sort of segmented into cards, and I have assignments to be graded. I have class and student management, so I can see my classes, how many students are in there. I can create new classes and sort of edit that information there, and I have assignment templates, and this might be assignments I've previously set up. And gone through criteria and, set up all the custom assignments, the rubrics and so forth. And so I have a sort of a history and a resource of all my assignments that I've set up, and they get stored as templates here as well. And then also I can see, recently uploaded content. And this is where I would have my, my XML uploads. If I'm, creating my own content or something that's outside of the repertoire that I want my class or my students to work on, and I can, see what I've done there. And I can also upload new content from there. And that's my access point to that. On the other side, I've got sort of on the right side of the, the home screen, I have sort of an exploration panel. And right here, we sort of feature a couple of the featured artists or the sort of the star content. It can be anything from a composer like Brian Balmages or film themes or so forth. Just to sort of give people an indication of what there is to discover. And if you click on the Explore, it takes you over to a carousel where it's sort of there's a little bit more to discover along the lines of genre, like exhilarating music or maybe seasonal stuff like Christmas music or spooky stuff for Halloween and so forth. And right below that, there's a sort of a 3x3 grid of sort of buckets of types. So there's band and orchestra, exercises, choir, jazz improv, method books. There's some free selections, sight singing, sight reading, solos, and a repertoire of uploaded content as well.
Excellent. And so once they've found something repertoire-wise, whether it's, something that the teachers uploaded themselves or that already is in SmartMusic itself, what's the next step after that? They're going to choose the piece and basically assign it to students, aren't they?
Right, absolutely. And so basically this walks you through sort of a set of steps as you get sort of walk through the various sort of aspects of what assignment you'd like to present. So the very first thing you have, the title of your assignment. You get the chance to choose from a pre-written assignment that's been created by, educators and authors. So this might be very general or it might be specific. And you have a choice between predefined assignments, or you can make a custom one, or it can be the whole, the whole piece. You can add specific instructions here on this page as well. And so the next one, this page is a Rubix page, and basically, you have to include one criteria, and that can be the assessment grade. But the way that we've designed Rubix for the new SmartMusic we think is fairly cool. So you can design a rubric that has as many horizontal axes or as horizontal points as you like. So, for example, you can have criteria, don't play flat, don't play sharp, make sure that your legato is nice and smooth, watch the intonation at the last section. So you can make, as many sort of criteria across as you like, and then you can add vertically as many different rubrics as you like without having to constrain them all to the same number of horizontal criteria. Does that make sense?
Yeah, right. Yes. I think I was going to say about the rubrics how great they are. They're very flexible because you can tailor them to your own need, but I don't think I realised that it was that flexible. So that's awesome. Really good.
And then in each one you can set a grading criteria and points that are available. And it's, we try also to make it as flexible as possible without making it too intensely detailed that it's confusing or it sort of diffuses your momentum to get stuff done. You know what I mean? Yeah,
the thing I noticed, it's super simple. When you look in there, you can just keep it really, really simple and divide, your 100% worth of grade up into just a couple of different categories if you want, but you can go really, really detailed if you need to. And I love the fact that you can change the weighting for your own specific needs in that rubric area because, 1 week you might be focusing really on intonation or something like that. And then so you can make that the heavier part of the grading, and other things might be a bit lower on the list, but then you can switch it around. So, the flexibility there is really good.
Absolutely. And also once you sort of define it, or once you create these rubrics, they're available for any assignment going forward that you like. So you can create things that will come back, or a standardized way that you look at your students or the grades, and you can sort of keep it and apply it to different assignments.
Yeah. And some of those things also are kind of self-grading, aren't they? So SmartMusic can obviously, once the students play, and we'll get onto the student workflow in a moment, but once the student's actually playing, SmartMusic basically records their performance and listens to what they're doing, and it can recognise whether the student's, sharp or flat or early or late when they play. So parts of the rubric are actually graded automatically because SmartMusic can pick up those things themselves. That's a really good time-saving feature for for teachers who, have to spend time assessing students. But SmartMusic will do some of the work for them. I guess.
Right, and well, you can also have the grade automatically. You can have this assignment graded automatically, so it will automatically add it to the grade book, so you don't have to go through each one. Yeah. If you don't care, if you have a bunch of students and you're sort of looking for sort of directional stuff, or you're looking for clues, and you can very quickly hone in on who has the most challenges with their instrument, and you can very quickly say, okay, their automated grade was a little low. Why don't I dig in a bit deeper and have a listen, to what's going on? Yeah,
that's right. And conversely, if you do want to have the control completely and listen to everything and provide the grade yourself by what you hear, you've also got the flexibility to do that too, which is excellent.
Yeah.
A bit more time consuming for the teacher having to listen to everything all the time, but it's there and it's just so great. And also when you're assigning things for students, you've got the opportunity to provide a deadline that they have to work to, so they need to submit a recording to you by X date. And I noticed, I think one of the other great things is that you can even assign the tempo that they need to play that piece at. So the piece might be at 100 beats per minute, but that the student, when they're learning the piece, is going to need to play it slower. So along the way, they could have assignments which are at 80 beats per minute to start off with, working up towards the tempo pace, which is excellent.
Well, Well, I mean, that's a great segue to the next step of the. Well, I mean, because the next page is actually, called Customize Your Parts. So what this does is you click on a part, of the ensemble, and actually loads up the sheet music against the assignment, so you can see the area of the assignment. You can see the text that's going to accompany the assignment, and also you have, a couple options. You can change where the assignment is getting focused to, bar 39 through 42, for example. And then to your point, you have, tempo flexibility. So you can say it has to be exactly at the tempo, or at least to a different tempo, or any tempo. You can also, in this box, make it a sight reading exercise.
Oh yeah, tell us about that, because I really love that. I was lucky to have a little walkthrough a couple of weeks ago, and I got shown that bit. It was really good, and yeah. So tell us about the sight reading thing.
So basically, you can make this a sight reading anything. You can make a sight reading exercise, and you can give a variance on study time. So you can give somebody as little as 15 seconds if you if you're in that kind of mood coming into the. You can dial it up to 120 seconds. And so basically it gives the student this much time to have a look at the assignment before it records for you and submits. So
yeah, I love that. And I think it's basically locked down, so they can only submit the recording once. So it's like a true sight reading, scenario. It's not something where the students can kind of get away with doing it a couple of times first, and then obviously they'll practice, outside this sort of thing. But the sight reading, they won't know what it is, and it's much more of a true situation.
And then, I don't necessarily have to make this true for everybody.
So you've got the flexibility there too. That's excellent.
So then I can copy elements to all or none of the following instruments, anybody else in there. So I can make the selection, the tempo, the instructions, sight reading. So I can make this sort of very quickly customizable for an ensemble. So if I know, the flautist and the French horn really need sight reading work, I can definitely copy these parameters very quickly without having to set them up twice. And then, sort of like have a different flow for the rest of the ensemble without interrupting my time flow too much here.
Yeah, it's great. It's very much like a flipped classroom sort of scenario that's been, buzzword a lot in education in the last few years. But, I think this really does help you do that, because you can do a lot of the work ahead of time, set things up for the students, and then they are doing all of this stuff in their time. They don't need you sitting there with them. So to do a sight reading exercise, for instance, in the past you might have had to sit there and actually run that with them. But, the software will do that for you. And so it means that your time is freed up to spend more time doing the things that you need to do, like running the rehearsals and, working with students individually on the playing aspects and that sort of thing.
No, you're absolutely right on, because really and we've had educators tell us this is like SmartMusic really helps me focus on music, and what a powerful thing to be able to do. You come in and you're talking about playing together and listening and the shape of phrases and stuff, and you're not sort of breaking it down to sort of like these individualized private lessons while people muck around behind you.
Yeah, oh my gosh. That reminds me of, my experience in playing ensembles. That was truly, what we did have when I was growing up. And really I think the note bashing, do you call it that in the States? That's what we say here in Australia, note bashing, in a rehearsal. It sounds awful, but that's the time that the conductor has to run through individual sections in the ensemble and, okay, violins, we're going to do this part here, and you work on their bit, and like you said, the rest of the group is kind of throwing things at each other or getting distracted by and they can't do anything really, because they've just got to sit there and wait.
It just turns into Lord of the Flies behind you while you try and get
exactly.
Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, and the whole flipped classroom thing, it's really that hopefully you get to the point where the students are able to do a lot of the groundwork, the legwork, away from the rehearsal time, and that they get to do that at home when they've got the practice time, and then come to rehearsal, hopefully, if they've done their assignments and done their preparation that they're supposed to do. And I know that there are exceptions to that, but on the whole, the ensemble as a whole would be further ahead. And then, like you said, you've got that rehearsal time with the kids to actually do the nice bits and get a bit more musical. Have you had feedback? I'd love to know about feedback from teachers. Have they, have you had specific feedback about the change that it's been able to provide for them with rehearsal time and performance standard, I suppose, ultimately?
Well, I mean, I think that is the feedback I'm speaking of, is that, people that find the value in that are really, really happy that they get to spend more valuable time in the class, in a way that they, hadn't been able to as effectively before. They get to spend most of the class time talking about how the music goes and running stuff and rehearsing it and having the repetition of the ensemble setting, sort of be a factor of, getting ready for the performance instead of, sort of putting these pieces together. They spend more time flying and less time trying to put the wings on it.
Yeah, that's good. That's a good analogy. I like that.
Right.
Yeah. We used to always, in groups that I've been in over the years, we used to spend a lot of the time doing that note bashing, as I said, and working at the technicalities of the performance. And then the last minute part was always adding dynamics or nuances or phrasing and stuff. And really that should be in there so early on and not just like an afterthought at the end. So, yeah, a much better situation, I think.
Well, and at that point, everybody sort of realizes the gravity of the reality that we're actually playing this tomorrow. So everybody's sort of in a panic state.
Yeah, exactly.
Including the teacher, and it's you're not prepared for a nice, relaxed, enjoyable time of music. You're like,
yeah, exactly. This episode of the Music Tech Teacher podcast is brought to you by the Midnight Music community. The Midnight Music community is an online space for music teachers who'd like help using technology in their music lessons. There are online courses, video tutorials, lesson plans, music tech news, and professional development certificates are provided for any training that you undertake. I'm inside the community every day, personally answering members' questions and sharing tips and ideas. The best thing is that you get to connect with hundreds of other music teachers just like you and share your own experiences and occasional music tech frustrations. For more information and a special joining price just for the listeners of this podcast, visit midnightmusic.com.au/podcast offer. That's midnightmusic.com.au/podcast offer. Now, tell us about the workflow for the student. So, student basically gets an assignment from a teacher. So that's going to be, I need you to play this section and submit a recording to me so that I can hear it, or, the assessment part of it. So talk through what they do. Basically, they're going to log in. They'll see the assignment from the teacher, and what happens after that point.
So the student actually has a pretty similar view when they log in. They have a set of cards. On the left, my pending assignments. We have a history of my graded assignments and my late assignments. If you have a teacher that's kind enough to allow late assignments, and then you have a list of classes that you're in, and we still have the same sort of set of tiles that you can explore and sort of like discover some stuff that maybe you didn't know you were interested in, because I think we feel like it's a really important aspect of. Okay, let me take a step back. So when you're a little guy and you're in 7th grade or you're in sort of middle school and you picked out a clarinet because it seemed like it was the easiest thing to carry on the bus.
I wish someone had told me that tip actually choosing instruments growing up, because it's only occurred to me later in life that, part of choosing an instrument should be the practicalities of carrying the thing around. And I played a cello at one point, and my mum had a Mini. We were driving around in this Mini, and it would only fit in the front seat with its neck sort of extended up between the front two seats, the driver's seat. So, yeah, I didn't continue the cello for long, but bassoon later on, again, it's a larger thing.
Still, you pick it out because you're like, hey, that looks easy to carry, and then knows you how much you can hate a reed.
I know. Yeah. Oh my gosh, double reeds, honestly. Oh, single reeds as well, but double reeds even worse.
Oh man, yeah. So it might be the case where you're a very talented bassoonist, but nothing that we're covering really resonates with you, and so. having as a teacher sort of like a method of discovery or exploring stuff that maybe would engage you, but also having you as a student be able to go away and take a look through stuff and maybe find something that, I would have no idea as a teacher that you might be interested in. You might come back on Monday and say, yeah, Raiders of the Lost Ark is amazing.
Yeah, yeah.
And I never would have guessed, but it gives me sort of like a point of engagement with you that I might not have known about. So, having these points of discovery, I think are, they're important for us to be able to provide.
Yep, that's great. And so so let's go on from there. So they see their assignment, they're going to open that up, and then what's the experience like from them at that point onwards?
All right, so let's see. Basically, when I'm logging in, I'd see that I have an assignment due, so I can decide to play the assignment. It loads it up, it takes me there. Again, as a student, I see pretty much a very similar look, a very similar experience to how the teacher would see it. You have up at the top, I have my takes, I have the tracks. This has, the accompaniment volume, the my part volume, which is, the notes I should be playing. And we use the Garrett sound set actually, so we could get at least a little bit closer to how the instrument sounds. So when a student listens through to the part that they should be playing, at least it has a closer context to how their instrument sounds.
Yeah, I really love this aspect, and the sounds are really good. I played through some of the repertoire, and it's just really good to have a real instrument sound playing your part back. So if the student wants to hear how it goes, they can just press play and have a listen to the actual part as well as everybody else's parts too. So they get to hear the accompaniment, which is great, but all played on real instruments. And it's so much better than that really dorky kind of MIDI sound that we're all used to hearing over the years. I mean,
the funky piano.
Oh man. And as a singer, for me, choral sounds in notation software, they're never going to be right. They're just never going to be right.
Oh no, just slightly cringy, yes?
Yeah, slightly. Oh my gosh. It's funny actually, when I do choral scores myself in notation software, the first thing I do, I have a template actually set up with the sound is not the vocal sound in the notation software. It's actually, often it's clarinet or something, or just piano even would be good, but sometimes I need something that contrasts with the piano accompaniment, so I set it to, clarinet or something different. But yeah, the real sounds are good. And, with the choral, I had a look through some of the choral repertoire, and there are recordings of real people singing a lot of the choral repertoire. So again, you're never going to have you can't really do a sample library for choral stuff like you can, the instrumental stuff, because who knows what syllable you need them to sing. So the fact that it's like a real recording is just fantastic. You get to hear real people singing and not just have that horrible ooh-ah kind of dodgy MIDI notation sound there.
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right, and that's a huge point of engagement. It's got to be believable. It's got to sound and feel real. So we definitely put effort into making sure that we have as high quality and professional recording for all of the content as we can get.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's great, the playback aspect of it from the student point of view is, as you said, you can hear the part that you're supposed to be playing, but you've got complete control over turning that down. So you could have that actually quite faintly in the background or not at all, or quite loud, one or the other. And you can have the accompaniment playing, or you could have it softer, or again, not at all. And one of the things that I think this must help with, with rehearsals and longer term, when the student gets back to the ensemble, is that they actually can get practice at counting the rests. Now, this sounds like a really weird thing, but it just occurred to me the other day that, one of the things that happens is you go away from the ensemble and you practice your part and you go, okay, I've got 18 bars rest, and you go, all right, skip to the next section, and you go on and play and practice the next section. And then you get back to the ensemble and people just don't know how to count rests, and this must help with that regard. You actually do get practice at counting the rests if you let the accompaniment play through as it's supposed to, the rest of the ensemble play.
Well, no, absolutely. And hopefully you learn your notes at home, so you get some real life practice at counting rests when you rehearse it in class.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think it's such a funny thing. I do remember that too. Just skip through whole sections of pieces if you weren't playing, and counting rests was One of the more difficult aspects, I think, of playing in an ensemble, which sounds ridiculous, I know you're not doing anything, but you have to concentrate very hard on counting rests when you're not actually supposed to be playing, and be ready to come in. Nothing worse than getting that eagle-eye stare from the conductor when you haven't got your instrument up to your mouth or, in position ready to play, and you knock your teeth out if you're a wind player or a brass player. Now, other useful things from a student point of view is that they can choose a short section, can't they, and loop the playback. So if there are 2 or 4 bars that they need to practice over and over, which is, a really good way to practice a hard part, they can just set up a loop for themselves.
And if it's playing back, it will loop the bar you click on as you're playing it back, which I've found very useful myself.
Oh, say that again. So what do you mean by that?
So as it's playing back and you look ahead, say, a bar, and you're like, all right, I know this is tricky. You can click on that bar, click on the loop tool as it's going past the bar when it's playing, right, and it will just loop.
Oh, that's good. So you don't have to sort of predefine it and take a time out to do that. Oh, that's really good. That's really good. I was going to say that one of the other useful things is that the student can click on a note to hear just an individual note if they want to. So great for beginning brass players, I would imagine, who need to sort of have the pitch in their head almost to be able to create the note. When you're starting out, that can be quite difficult. So to be able to hear the note and also click on it and see fingering if there's fingering involved with whichever instrument you're playing as well.
So yeah, you can hear the note and you can see the fingering used, and you can see a little diagram of that fingering as well. So I
think it's just good because I think in early days of software generally and all these great useful tools, you ended up often with a lot of different tools that you would use. So you might have a fingering chart, in a separate place, and nowadays you might have an app for that, but it's great because it's kind of all in the same place, and it's quite handy there too.
The only thing I'd say about playback before we scamper on it is that we worked hard to make it immediate. So while you're playing back, if you click anywhere else in the score while you're playing back, the jump to that position is almost instantaneous.
Yeah, right. Excellent. That's really good.
If you're doing something for half an hour and, like the seconds are floating by while you're waiting for it to catch up with what you're doing.
Yeah. Or even worse, in the olden days, I'll say olden days. I remember my, the olden days of backing tracks, we used to have, or my brother used to have Music -1. Do you remember those? Yeah.
Really?
And honestly, it was a tape cassette, and there was probably records around as well, like vinyl, but a tape cassette of Music -1. And to find the bit that you wanted to go back from was always really, really hard work. You'd have to rewind, and then you had to know the music really intimately to know where you were up to find the bit that you wanted to play from. So that was very difficult. One of the things that did blow me away a little bit was the option to work in, I think it's called percussive mode or something like that, where you can just work on rhythm. Now, I think this is really awesome because often, when you're learning something as an instrumentalist, when you're a student, particularly starting out, it's very difficult to do rhythm and pitch stuff all at the same time. And to be able to take one away, I mean, as a teacher, this is how I've worked with students in the past. It's like, okay, just put the instrument down and we'll just work on the rhythmic part for that passage of music and get that right first, and then pick up the instrument and then play it in that rhythm. So there's an option to do that. Can you tell us a bit about how that works?
Oh, so basically, along the top you have, the tabs, My Takes, Tracks. You have a Display tab, and then you have an Assessment tab. So in the Assessment tab, you have the ability to show assessment, which you can click on or off, if you feel like it's distracting to see the red and green notes as you're doing them. And you can also turn on Percussion Mode, and that is the mode that just listens to the rhythmic aspect of what you're doing. And then, the idea is that you clap or make a percussive sound, and it will just on the rhythm.
Yeah, I love that. So as a teacher, you can just even set that as an assignment, not the whole, kit and caboodle of playing the whole thing. You can just set that as an assignment too. Yeah, it's just really good. So once the students have, they've practiced and they're up to it, they can then basically hit a record button and play through their part, and they submit that to the teacher, and that's where the assessment part comes into it. So that's really good. I think from a management point of view, that's one of the big benefits for the teacher is that students will submit from their own laptop or device that they're working on, and then everything comes to the teacher instantaneously, and there's not kind of a need to go and gather stuff or get emails from students, which would have been the old-fashioned way of doing things. But But nowadays, because it's all online, it's just much more seamless, isn't it?
Absolutely. And, as the student is doing the take, everything that's outside of the assignment is grayed out a little bit. And when you press record, you have the option that the student is sort of directed to, hey, would you like to reset the parameters to the assignment, criteria given by your teacher?
Right. Okay, cool.
Snaps you right to the place that you're supposed to be working on, and you are sort of funneled to do a take on that specific sort of area. So, we want to limit the sort of, I thought you said to work on bar 26 sort of dog.
Yeah.
So whenever you're happy, you can take as many takes as you like, unless it's sight reading, which, then, oops. But then whenever you're happy, you can submit the tape. But also, we wanted to make sure that if there was extenuating circumstances or something else that you wanted to tell the teacher, you have the option to sort of like communicate a little bit, via text as you submit. So the teacher would also get not only your musical tape, but they would also get a note from you about it. The
dog ate my homework, yeah.
Yeah, the dog ate my homework. I thought we were doing bar 26. No one told me it was sight reading.
Yeah. Oh, and I just remembered something else about the sight reading. Isn't there an option to have the music kind of, I think we did cover it. The music's kind of covered at first, isn't it? It's not like you get hours of time to look at the sight reading before you actually play. So the screen, the music is covered on the screen, and then you get it uncovered and then got to play straight away, after the allocated time.
Oh yeah, you get the timer set. So this is probably a real surprise for people getting 15 seconds of time to do it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a bit of a shock to the system. And just briefly, let's just finish up maybe talking a little bit about repertoire. I mean, I'm not expecting you to list all the repertoire because there's an extensive library, but what are some of the more popular things that are included in the repertoire?
I think probably the meat and potatoes of the value that people really find is probably through the methods. Sound innovations, essential elements, excellent achievement, standard of excellence. Like those sort of the big methods. And I think that really also having the variety of publishers, is also key to be able to pick and choose between Carl Fisher, Chose, Alfred, Hal Leonard, and being able to truly sort of customize your experience based on all these different inputs. I think that that's a very important part of what we have to offer.
Yeah, it's a big range of publishers. I did have a look at the list, and it's too long for us to probably say on here. But but there's a big range, and all those popular methods, as you say. I did actually have it was funny, one question from someone who I said to them I was going to be doing this interview with you, and they wanted to ask about the guitar method, the Sound Innovations one, and when that might be appearing in SmartMusic. But it's funny, I had a look yesterday and actually found it's in there already. So whether they haven't checked recently, or maybe they're not on the new SmartMusic and it's not in their version, I'm not sure, but I'll get back to them and let them know. But yeah, it's great to see that it's in there, and I'm presuming you have a roadmap for future repertoire to go in as well. It's an expanding thing, isn't it, all the time?
Absolutely, and we have new releases from publishers, and we also have teacher requests, and we gauge a lot of our development of content and features and so forth. Really we listen to the feedback that we get through customer success, through our ed services team. Lee Calistad and Giovanna Cruz do an amazing job of gathering appropriate feedback and prioritizing it and really delivering that through to our team. And the sales team, we really try very hard to gather as much pertinent information from as many places as we possibly can to do the best things we can as quickly as possible.
Yeah, that's great. And there's an option, of course, you mentioned earlier that you can upload your own repertoire, your own materials into the tool, so that SmartMusic will then, you can use your own stuff in there, and all the benefits of the SmartMusic kind of platform, but you can actually put your own things in there. And I think in the past it was really just previous to this version of SmartMusic, it was really just finale files, but now it's opened up to general Music XML. And for people who are not familiar with that, it's Music XML is kind of the universal file type for all notation software. So if you've created something in a different platform, you can export it as Music XML and then put it into SmartMusic and use it there. I think that's really great for people who maybe are using a different platform but want to use the tool. I mean, it's such a great tool. So to have that opened up is a really good thing.
No, I mean, and absolutely, we made the conscious decision to open it up as wide as possible for that exact reason.
Yeah, excellent. Fantastic. It's been so great talking to you and hearing some more details about it. I do think it's a great thing, and I constantly remind myself how great things are these days with technology compared to, you know, the time where I was growing up learning instruments and, you know, all the notation stuff and everything we have available today. And I think it's a really good thing in a way that I personally feel like it's a good thing I didn't grow up with it, because I appreciate things so much more these days. And my own kids are going to just find it, you know, it's part of life, all these great, awesome tools and the convenience and everything that you can do. But I constantly sit there going, wow, this is awesome. I can't believe that we can do the sorts of things that we can these days.
I completely agree. I absolutely do. I think it's fantastic and what we can do and how much music we can make, how quickly. I think it's fantastic.
Yeah. Now, let's just finish briefly. The tech requirements for using the new SmartMusic, the online version. Is there anything that people need to be aware of, you know, for technical requirements on that side of things?
Well, right now it's Chrome browser is the requirement. We don't have a dedicated Android device yet. iPad is available. Generation 3 or newer. And we worked as hard as we could to make sure that we include all the Chromebooks, so it should work on any Chromebook. Also, there is in the new SmartMusic, if you go to smartmusic.com, there is an area that has specifics on the technical requirements.
Yep, that's really good. And I find my eyes glaze over a little bit sometimes when I'm reading tech requirement lists on software websites. So, you know, if you as a teacher are going there and, you know, maybe show it to your IT person if you're not sure whether your particular devices, you know, can meet the requirements. That's what I do if I'm not sure what all those terms mean at times. So that's a good thing. And the pricing model, I mean, you can use the platform itself for free, essentially, can't you? But when you want to get access to the repertoire, that's where there's a paid component to the thing.
Well, absolutely. We wanted to make sure that anybody had access to all the tools. We didn't want to sort of limit your sort of use of the tools and the planning and the grade book and the assignment loop and all that sort of stuff. And in the free version, there's sight reading. We made an effort to put a lot of sort of staples in there that teachers can just use. And there's no time limit on the free version. If you want to sort of use, premium content, the Hal Leonard content, the Alfred content, and so forth, and the method books, then that's when you pay for the service.
Yep, excellent. And I'm in Australia here. It's available across the states at the moment, but I understand it's going to be rolled out further afield sometime in the future. You might not have a date for that.
Oh, absolutely. Don't have a time frame on that, but yes.
Great, that's good. I needed to check because I've had a couple of people say to me, oh, but I'm in the UK, I think one query was from. So it will be eventually in other countries other than the States. But I think people will find it just really useful. Thank you so much for talking to me today. It's been great to catch up and to hear some more information about SmartMusic and what's been going on with the company and so on. So I hope it goes really well. And I will give some information to people in the show notes for this, this particular episode. I'll put a link in there where you can find some more information about SmartMusic too. So thank you, Fred.
Oh, thanks for having me. It was an absolute pleasure. Anytime, really.
Yeah, great to talk. And you're probably finishing up work for the day. I'm just getting started. I'm about to take my kids to school and have breakfast and all sorts of things. It's early in the morning for me, but it's great that we can catch up even though there's a big time difference between us.
All right. Very good.
Thanks so much. See you later, Fred. Bye-bye.
All right, bye for now.
The Music Tech Teacher podcast is hosted by me, Katie Wardrobe. You can find more information and links from today's episode at midnightmusic.com.au/21. Thanks for listening and see you next time.